Hi guys, hope you're well. Today we're just going to be talking about the process of learning a new skill. Okay, now obviously inevitably in CrossFit there's so many different things to learn. Depending on where you're starting from, then you are going to spend some time learning a new skill. Okay, whether that's obviously something like Olympic weightlifting and getting to grips with your technique there, or whether it's something more gymnastics focused, which obviously can be anything from your pull-ups all the way up to things like your handstand walks and muscle ups. Okay, now obviously it doesn't really matter too much which one of those things you're working on. All right, there's a process that you want to work through that's going to help you master that skill. Okay, and at times, that process might not happen as fast as you want it to. It might be a little bit frustrating, okay, but the more you understand that process, the easier it is for you guys to see it through, okay? So obviously, the beginning phase of learning any new skill, obviously, is assessing where you're currently at, okay? And there might be things that you need to work on before you can move on to the skill that you're really trying to learn, okay? So let's just say you're trying to learn how to snatch, all right? It might be that you just don't have the mobility to get yourself in good positions when you're, say, receiving the bar in a squat, okay? Or let's say you're trying to learn a muscle up, you might not have the pulling strength that's going to help you get that muscle up. So in which case, obviously, you're best off working on the things which are going to help you get the movement quicker, which in these two instances would be obviously working on your mobility, all right? And then obviously working on your pulling strength. Now, at times, all right, we can do these alongside other things, okay? But equally, sometimes you have to do them by themselves, okay? From there then, we might look at certain progressions, okay? And these can obviously be quite specific, obviously to the movement, but also to you, all right? Which are then gonna help us master the smaller pieces of the skill first, all right, in isolation, so that when we put them all together, then everything flows much better, all right? Because generally in CrossFit, when we perform these high skilled movements, you don't have a lot of time to think, okay? So again, whether it's snatches or muscle ups, they're both very fast, explosive movements, and you don't have time to stop midway through the movement and correct your form, okay? Like you would on something like, say, a back squat, where it's just slower and it's easier to do that. Okay, so this is where we would use your progressions, okay? So obviously with snatches, it could be drills such as snatch balance, okay? Tall snatches, drop snatches, that kind of thing. With muscle ups, it can be things like ring swings, hips to ring, hip hops with your feet on the box, okay? Again, each focus on a specific part of the full movement, okay? But helping you get to grips with that, making that feel really, really natural before we try and put the whole skill together, okay? Obviously then from there, then we would move on to performing the skill, all right, hopefully. All right, it will be at a point where you've got the skill, all right, you can do it. It's probably not going to be perfect just yet, okay, but you can do it, all right? And obviously doing all those progressions helped. But then again, when you first get into that stage where you can do it, say one muscle up, all right, or you can just about get into a full snatch position with reasonable technique, okay, it doesn't mean it's going to be consistent. Okay, because like learning anything, all right, you'll have days which are great and days which aren't so great, all right, and that's true for whatever you try and learn, in any aspect of life, all right, and it takes just spending time repeating that skill over and over again to make it nice and consistent, okay, and this is where it can get a little bit frustrating, because you'll have some days where it feels great and you'll feel like you're ready to move on and start doing 2 muscle ups, say, or add weight to the bar, okay? But then equally, the next time you do them, you might come in and it might feel horrendous, all right? You might not get any muscle ups and you feel like you're constantly, battling that kind of yo-yo of some days are good, some days are bad, okay? Which, like I say, can get frustrating, but equally, it's just where you need to just keep calm and take the good days with the bad days, okay? Because what we're trying to do in this period of time, obviously, A, is build your consistency, but also just start to accumulate kind of more reps doing that particular movement, because that's what's going to help you get that consistency, all right? When your form's good and you're hitting the right positions, then repetition is key, because that's just really going to make things really sink in, okay? And make it feel like a really natural movement. All right, and then obviously once you're consistent with those movements, then we can start to think about adding a little bit more intensity, okay? So on your lifting, for example, that might be when we start adding a little bit more weight to the bar, okay? On things like your muscle ups, for example, once you've accumulated some consistent volume and you know that, every time you jump up to the rings, you're gonna hit a rep, all right? It might be where either we start to increase your number of reps, okay? Or depending on where you're at, if you can already do a few reps, then we might start to introduce just a little bit of fatigue, okay? So obviously, you know, we're not gonna go to do them in a full Metcon just yet, because the chances are your technique wouldn't quite hold up with that level of intensity, okay? But it might be that we do a set of muscle ups combined with something like, say, rowing, where you can control your heart rate. It's not full on intensity, okay? But it's still gonna challenge you a little bit more. It's still gonna make you have to work on your technique whilst you are a little bit fatigued, okay? But you're not so exhausted that you've got no control of the movement, okay? Again, we're going to spend a fair bit of time in this phase just accumulating that volume, getting comfortable, and again, just getting really, really consistent, okay? And then obviously from that, then we can start to move on to, you know, to the more complex ways of adding that intensity, okay? So obviously with lifting, again, it's quite simple. We're going to start to add a little bit of weight, all right? And we might, if you haven't really been doing them in Metcons, we might start to do them in Metcons as well, where again, you're more fatigued and your technique's going to be much more challenged, okay? And similarly with a skill like your ring muscle ups, all right? We're going to do them in a Metcon setting or a higher intensity setting, which obviously is more specific to CrossFit, which ultimately is where you want to get to, okay? But it means that there's obviously much more challenge there, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So again, it's just going to take time to get comfortable doing them in that kind of setting, all right? So we might start off with a very low kind of volume and then gradually increase in volume as you get more comfortable, okay? So as you can see, it's, you know, it's a step-by-step process, okay? And obviously the pace at which people progress through that process is very, very individual, okay? So when you are working through it, it's important that you don't spend too much time looking around you and thinking, you know, this person's gone from here to here in 3 months and I'm 3 months in and I'm still here, okay? You have to take things at your own pace, because everybody has obviously different kind of speeds of learning and how quickly they can pick things up, different levels of body awareness and how easily they can manipulate their technique based on a certain cue, all right? And then obviously everyone's coming from a different starting point. You know, obviously if you're someone who's, say, you know, challenged by mobility, then that can take a little bit longer to develop than someone who just needs to get their head around the skill itself, or of a particular part of the skill itself. All right, so through that process, you know, the main thing is just stay patient, focus on you, keep chipping away at it, all right, and you'll gradually just work through those steps over a period of time.